So we're going to talk about enterprise transformation here. And to my right is Tom Farley, the president of the New York Stock Exchange. And we have Helena Foulkes, who is executive vice president of CVS Health and head of CVS's entire retail and pharmacy business. And Dion Weisler, who is executive vice president of Hewlett-Packard today, and he's in charge of the printing and personal systems division, which is printing and PCs, and as of this November, he will be the CEO of the new HP, split from essentially a $60 billion company, split off from HP Enterprise, which Meg Whitman will be the CEO of. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So first of all, I'd love for you each to explain briefly what enterprise transformation means to you. Let's start with you, Tom.
Sure. I'll answer it two ways. And thinking about this panel this morning and just thinking about the three companies on the stage, they're roughly 400 years old in the aggregate. Wow. And the reason why we're all still in business and indeed flourishing is that enterprise transformation is ongoing over time. You know, all of our companies, whether it's health or perhaps not oscilloscopes, but technology, and in our case, matching buyers and sellers, we still have a core of what we originally set out to do, but we operate very, very differently, and that's because we're continually engaging in enterprise transformation. The second way I'll answer it is to say, from my experience, I've now run 200-plus-year-old companies. On the day, and
the other one was?
The New York Board of Trade is the world's futures exchange for sugar and other commodities. And I've started a technology company that ultimately I built up and sold to SunGard. And what I've observed is on the day a company starts, that's when you're the most outward focused. You're really focused on building a great product. You're really focused on customer needs. And then from that day forward, there's this really strong force to become inward looking, which is not a good thing. And inward looking both in terms of worrying about your own company and not customers' needs, but inward looking even within the company in terms of I'm just worried about my own portion of the business. I'm just worried about my own silo. I'm not going to even communicate within the company. And so to me, enterprise transformation, and indeed what we're going through right now at New York Stock Exchange, is reversing that and being that first day force that says, no, wait a minute. This is about customers. We need to be responsive. We need to be efficient and nimble. This isn't about silos or any individual employee's particular cares and concerns. It's about the customer and working together as a team.
Terrific. Helena.
Good. So lots of similarities. So for all of you, CVS Health is now a giant company. We'll do about $140 billion in sales this year. The retail business does about $70 billion. But then we have three other business units. We've got our PBM division, Pharmacy Benefits Management, which is called CVS Caremark. We're also the largest retail clinic in the country. We have about 1,000 Minute clinics all over the country. And then a fast-growing division, which is all around specialty medications. And for us, I joined the company 23 years ago when it was a small regional drugstore chain in the Northeast. And we've been on this journey, especially in the last 8 years, of trying to become a healthcare company. And I always tell people I feel really lucky, because retailing was my passion, but little did I know that healthcare is just a really fascinating place to be. What we're trying to do from a transformation perspective is to get people thinking that way, and we can get into later, you know, the big decision we made, obviously, about tobacco last year has in many ways been a catalyst, both internally and externally, for getting our organization to think differently, to think more boldly. Term I heard you talk about, Tom, which is how do we be nimble, how do we anticipate where the market's going, and also work together across these silos, because the power of our company comes from how we work together.
So we will talk about this later, but led by Helena, CVS, then called CVS, now called CVS Health, decided to get all tobacco products, including electronic cigarettes, $2 billion worth of annual business out of their stores. So we'll talk about that later. Dion.
Yeah, listen, I was doing the simple math. If there's 400 years amongst us here, we're the baby. We're only 75 years old. But I was recently in Bill and Dave's garage where Hewlett Packard started 75 years ago. And it was the first time I was there, and I've been in the company now about 3 years. And I was waiting to receive some customers, and I had a quiet moment in the garage by myself, sort of looking around what is effectively the epicenter of Silicon Valley. It was where it was born, thinking, oh my gosh, 75 years later, this is a $110 billion size organization with a very, very broad portfolio. And as we thought about the business, as we contemplated the future of Hewlett Packard, we thought to ourselves, how, with diverging market segments, how can we propel the company and the various divisions that we have inside the company at a much faster pace than we're able to do today? And that led to, I think, what is the ultimate enterprise transformation, a separation. If any of you have ever been through one of these things, this is not for the faint of heart. We are talking about creating here, quite ironically and coincidentally by the numbers, two $55 billion organisations. So there's embedded within one Fortune 50 company, almost two Fortune 50 companies. And it's an incredibly complicated journey to transform, but it's a very exciting opportunity to be able to be more flexible, more in tune with your customer segments, to be able to white sheet your company from the ground up as you reinvent and look outward. I completely resonate with what you're saying here, and put Humpty Dumpty together in a new way that really serves the customers in which you're targeting. And so as we are fast approaching day one for us is actually not the 1st of November when we'll physically ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange.
Thank you.
It'll
And stop at CVS Health on the way.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, excellent.
But really day one for us is in about 15 days on the 1st of August when we turn the light switch on. Every single person, all 270,000 people, will be mapped to one company or the other. We would have disentangled more than 750 legal entities in 166 countries around the world with a complicated tax structure like you wouldn't believe, an IT system that's been hung together over 75 years. We've had to make some tough decisions over the course of the last 9 months, and on the 1st of August we turn on the new systems and we begin operating as two companies for 1 quarter to demonstrate that we can close the books for when we start as two separate companies on the 1st of November. So an amazing journey.
So Dion, this essentially unravels a deal that was made over a decade ago when now presidential candidate Carly Fiorina was running Hewlett Packard and bought Compaq. And most of us in this room have been part of companies that have merged, and then I have, AOL Time Warner, and split apart. How do you think about that? If you want to transform the enterprise, there is an argument to be made for bringing two companies together and creating efficiencies that way. Now your argument is, and I interviewed Meg Whitman at our Most Powerful Women's Summit on the day this split was announced last October.
Yeah.
She's talking about how this is going to make the two companies more agile and efficient.
Yeah.
How can you convince us of that?
Yeah, look, I think it's a complicated question, and the markets are moving at such an incredible pace that at a moment in time, having everything together makes absolute sense. When you can do everything from the desktop to the data center, where all those pieces in between were much simpler than what they are today, it makes a whole lot of sense. However, at the pace at which the enterprise space is moving today, it's very difficult to harmonize the organization and really get the synergies across the entire organization, because you start to operate to the lowest common denominator. And what I mean by that is you have one sales ops organization. And so in Meg's side of the business, she has to be able to service the US Navy, everything to do with the US Navy. From everything they do in the data centers to the PCs to their networks and security and everything else in between. Meanwhile, I have to ship one thing every second. whether it be a PC or a printer. And the supply chain needs are very different when you look at those two things. So what you have to do is you have to build a sales ops organization that can deal with all of that. And so you make compromises along the way. And so at a point in time, you need to diverge in order to have the organization built appropriately for the markets in which you're serving.
Mm-hmm. Tom, you're essentially you're working to transform an over 2-century-old organization within a startup. ICE, which is Intercontinental Exchange, a startup, acquired the New York Stock Exchange in 2012. Tom joined ICE in 2007 and was named president of this newly acquired business. So what's it like trying to transform an old business within a startup?
It's fun because it's a New York Stock Exchange, although it has its moments. As you said, ICE is a startup. ICE went public in 2005, Intercontinental Exchange, and the parent company is now the largest exchange in the world by many metrics, I think second in terms of market cap. And it's this relative baby in the old line world of exchanges. And as you pointed out, the New York Stock Exchange was founded in 1792. So as you can imagine, those are two pretty fundamentally different cultures. And for that reason, primarily, as I said, it's had its moments because they are so fundamentally different. The nice thing we have going for us, and I have going for me, is that the New York Stock Exchange is just a great business. It's a respected brand. It generally puts a smile on people's face. And that's good. I had that to start with, the largest exchange in the world by trading, by listing, so on and so forth. So there was a really good base. But we wanted to bring to it even more of a customer focus, as I was saying before. Exchanges in this country, to some extent, had kind of lost their way, and we're really focusing on complexity and high-frequency traders and not focusing on institutional investors like T. Rowe, Fidelity, or the listed companies, HP, CVS, Sprint, Time. And so bringing that culture into a business that had become somewhat inward-looking has been challenging, but we're making great strides. And I will mention, just because we're at Fortune Brainstorm Tech, it's really not a choice if you want to be the leader in tech listings. Because if you want to be the leader in tech listings, you can't act like a 200-year-old company. Right. You have to be on the avant-garde in terms of technology. We've done some technology investments ourselves, an investment in Bitcoin. We're here at this conference. We're actually investing upwards of $50 million on a new trading system that'll be state-of-the-art and very, very reliable. And so we don't, in that particular way, we don't really have a choice.
CVS Health became this year number 10 on the Fortune 500, which shocked us quite candidly, and probably shocks you, having joined 23 years ago when the revenue was what?
About $3 billion, I think.
About $3 billion.
Yeah.
So, Helena, what has been the key to injecting a transformation mindset into your company?
Well, I've heard over the course of the last couple of days a lot of conversation among startups, and it's true in a big company, of the importance of culture. And I remember when I was in business school, all those classes about culture and people I thought were soft and unimportant. And now here I am and realizing the most important thing that I do every day is set the culture of the company along with the other leaders. And I would say that the really fun thing I always tell people about being in a big company and being an entrepreneur in a big company is you can make tremendous things happen. And so we're looking for people who have an entrepreneurial mindset and who break through barriers and want to get things done. And when that happens, we can make wonderful things happen. So tobacco was a great example. We had started internally 2 years before that decision, creating a very common language around culture. And our purpose we defined as helping people on their path to better health. We were trying to get people to understand, similar to your story, Dion, how did all their business units fit together? How was where did I sit if I was in specialty or MinuteClinic or the retail business? How did I fit into this big behemoth? So we created a common language around why we exist. And we really worked on that for a couple of years. And then we used that purpose as a filter for a big business decision, which was getting out of tobacco, because the ultimate thing you're going to do if you're really helping people on their path to better health is to exit the only category that we know kills people, kills 480,000 people every year. The thing that was really exciting and I didn't fully anticipate was how that decision emboldened the organization to do bigger other things. I think that we, everyone looked at it and said, oh my God, I hope this works out. Walking away from $2 billion in sales is huge. But a week later, our stock price was higher than it had been. We started getting a lot of kudos. We started winning more PBM clients. And so suddenly people in the organization said, wow, that was a big bet. I can make bets in my business that I didn't think I could make before, all around this common purpose. And so that has been incredibly energizing for the organization and has really got us thinking about moving towards this purpose in a faster way and taking some risks. And just in the last month, we announced 2 big acquisitions, one of a company called Omnicare, which services nursing homes and assisted living facilities for their prescriptions. And we also announced we're buying all the pharmacies within Target and renaming them and rebranding them as CVS Pharmacies. So it's been a really fun journey.
And you just used the word purpose several times in explaining that. And I was in a Gen Y breakout yesterday, and the supreme criteria the group was talking about for millennials in deciding whether to go and stay at a company is purpose, a sense of purpose. So how do you communicate the sense of purpose to your employee base? How many employees do you have?
We have about 210,000 employees. We have, I would say, if you walked into any of our major facilities all across the country and stopped anyone in the hallway and said, what's the purpose of this company? They would tell you. It's something we talk so much about.
And it is, they would say.
Helping people on their path to better health.
Okay.
And it's then spread to an enormous number of people coming to us for employment. And when we say, well, what drew you to CVS Health? Why did you come here? Almost inevitably, they say, I love what you're doing. And they don't use the word purpose always, but there's a connection to it. So there's a real sense of pride right now in the company. And I do think that I probably underestimated the power of purpose a few years ago until we got on this journey.
I am going to open it up in a minute. One more question for you, Helena. Now that you've gotten $2 billion worth of tobacco products out of the stores, how are you thinking about soft drinks?
So, one of the things that I talked about in terms of creating an organization that feels empowered to do bigger, bolder things is we have a very big retail business that's not in the pharmacy space. We call it front store. And one of the things that team did after this decision is we stepped back and said, what do we want all this to stand for? And in fact, a couple of us were in a store right the day after our announcement. And I was talking to a store manager and I said, what are you hearing from customers about our decision? And he said, well, they really love it. It's even the people who smoke know they shouldn't smoke and they're proud of us. But the first thing the question I'm getting is, why don't you sell healthier food? So we've been on a journey since then to really think about the impact we could have for people around giving them healthier choices. And the philosophy we use is we call it nudging people. All of those other things in moderation are fine. There's no amount of smoking that's okay. All those other things in moderation are fine. So what we're trying to do, we'll reset 500 stores this year and put up more front and center really healthy products like nutrition bars, Kind bars, Chobani yogurt, high protein foods, nuts, things that people are looking for because Americans aren't eating 3 meals a day anymore. They're eating 6 snacks a day.
Can you imagine a time that CVS gets rid of soft drinks altogether?
We're not talking about it that way because I don't see that yet, but what we really do see is a massive trend towards much healthier foods, and water is the best example.
Okay. Yes. Dan?
Pattie, you asked part of my question, but so a second part of that, or kind of two-part. One, you've talked about losing $2 billion in revenue by taking tobacco out. Does that include the ancillary when someone comes in to get a pack of cigarettes, the Coke they might buy or something else? And secondly, are you surprised that your other major competitors haven't followed suit, or do you expect them to follow suit?
Sure, yes. The $2 billion included what we called the basket. So it was $1.5 billion of cigarette sales, along with about $500 million of the basket. The basket number's been slightly better than we expected. So if there's been a pleasant surprise, it's been that way. Yes, we were wargaming this, as you can imagine, and had said to ourselves, if another chain did this before us, we would quickly follow suit, be in the same news cycle, get out that day. And here we are a year and a half later, and we haven't seen any moves. But I think it's one of those things that's inevitable. You know, I have 4 teenage children, and when I tell them, for example, that when I was their age, I could go on airplane flights, and in the back of the bus, people smoked, you know, they can't believe that. So I think in the next decade, we'll live in a world where it would be unbelievable that you could buy cigarettes in a place that is in the prescription business.
Yes, question back here. Please identify yourself.
Joni Liebeck, local. It's great that the company has become so conscious for its workers and for its clients. But is there a better feedback loop that they can establish? Because if you go drive and you drop off the prescription, and it could take half an hour, and then you go to pick it up when they tell you, and they don't have the full amount of what you're getting, and then you have to go back 4 times. It can be very frustrating because the pharmacy doesn't seem to be as big, and they run out, and they don't seem to have an automatic computer link, so when something is low, that they automatically get it back.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I'll talk about your store later, but I would say that
I wouldn't want to be that store manager. That is not good.
look, we work really hard every day to manage a very complicated business. Similar to what Dion said, we'll fill about 1 billion prescriptions this year, and so we don't do it perfectly. We have plenty of room for improvement. Just the fact that we're here at the tech conference, I will say that one of the things I'm really proud of is work that we've done in the last year, and Brian Tills, our Chief Digital Officer, is here, around the power of digital in making a better service experience. So we now have 15 million people who are signed up for text alerts from us. And so if you sign up for that, we'll tell you exactly when your prescription's ready. And later this summer, we'll start texting you if there's a problem with your prescription, insurance, out of stock, any other issues. So we're really thinking about digital as a way to enhance the service experience.
So last week, as most of you know, the New York Stock Exchange had a little blip in their business. A little over a 3-hour outage last Wednesday, and I got a call on Thursday from one of the people at the New York Stock Exchange. Hello, and I go, is he not coming? And he said, oh no, he's coming. So good for you, Tom, and thank you, because that was a crisis day for you. And 2 questions. What did you learn from that experience, and how did it change your thinking about Wall Street's patience for your business transformation?
Will you say the first question again?
What did you learn?
Okay, great. Can I just say quickly and then respond directly to the question? I've really enjoyed listening to these two on this panel, and I'm not just saying this because they're New York Stock Exchange listed companies. But seriously, I mean, talk about purpose. I love how clearly they each articulate the purpose of their company, and I bet they're really fun places to work.
Nice.
I learned a ton last week, and just to explain what happened for any of you who are living under a rock, we had an outage in our main market on the New York Stock Exchange the night before we did a small release, and in so doing that release, there was an error in the configuration, so one part of the system, the gateways, couldn't talk to another, the matching engines, and then we fixed that error, and in so doing, actually interacted with a latent bug that had been in our system for some time, and that caused significant problems. As with most technology crises, as you all know, it's not usually the one issue that gets you. It's kind of when you've triggered a couple. And so we had this outage. You know, when you get on the plane to go home today, for the most part, it's all going to be automated. The plane's going to take off, and then the plane's going to land, and you almost don't even need a pilot. But you do need a really great pilot, because something goes wrong. You need somebody like Captain Sullenberger who can land the plane. And I take tremendous pride in the work that our team did, because I made the decision to suspend trading. We didn't understand exactly what was going on, and I felt like there was too much risk for customers. And so I made that decision. But then our SWAT team of great technologists took over, and were able to diagnose the problem, communicate to the industry. We sent out 27 market-wide notices. I went on TV 5 times, held 3 industry calls. Everybody knew what was going on. We told the industry we'd be back up for the close. The open and the close are very important trades. And no customers were hurt in a meaningful way. By and large, customers are very happy with the way we handled it. And importantly, you know, CVS and HP stock continued to trade the entire day, the open, during the day, and on the close. But it really caught a nerve, because we are the New York Stock Exchange, and it was a volatile day. United Airlines had issues, Wall Street Journal had issues, Greece was certainly having issues, China was having issues, if you recall, last week. I think at that point it had been down 35% in just a few weeks. And so this story just really kind of caught fire. And I do think, again, as a point of pride in the New York Stock Exchange, that's in part because of our central role in the capital markets. And when you say kind of what did you learn, that's one thing that was reaffirmed for me that I learned. And the second thing was, again, just the importance of transparency, owning up to the problem. If I could do it again, I would have communicated more than 27 times. I would have done it sooner. And I would have even divulged more information sooner than we did, notwithstanding the fact that our team did a really nice job in that respect. With respect to enterprise transformation, it doesn't change anything that we're doing. When I came into the New York Stock Exchange, I inherited a set of systems that has literally hundreds of applications, thousands of servers. It's been around, or tens of thousands. The systems have been around in some cases for 2 decades, or even 3 decades. And the first thing that I did running the exchange is say, we need to build a new system. And so that's what we're working on in parallel. And we're going to build a system that's a lot less complicated, a lot easier to maintain. And we'll have a very reliable system. And then finally, just as a matter of personal privilege, I say this with all due humility, because we had a big outage last week, but we have an outstanding track record prior to last week. Kind of tops in our industry, and customers do rely on us very, very much. It doesn't make for a good story in the press, but if you speak to any of our customers who had the most on the line, they trust us, they know these things happen, and they're by and large appreciative of how we responded. Anything
you did with, I mean, I was looking at your stock price over the last week, just this morning, went down, it's back up. Anything that you did in terms of communicating with Wall Street?
Yeah, so part of those 27 communications that I referred to, I actually personally went on during the outage 3 industry calls with customers. And one at noon that day, just shortly after the outage, one at 1, and one at 2 just prior to coming up. And the consensus view is that was really helpful and appropriate, and it kind of calmed nerves amongst both the sell side, the traditional broker-dealers, as well as the buy-side community. In addition, our listed companies were very concerned, notwithstanding the fact that their stocks kept trading the whole time. It is alarming. What's going on? The New York Stock Exchange is down. And so our team was pounding the phones, and our listed companies, and sending out broadcast emails, and our listed companies felt like they too were in the loop.
Good. Question over here. Yes.
I'm Boniface Zano. I own a couple of shares of Hewlett-Packard. So you're in 2 businesses, printers, everything's going digital, why do we need printers? And 2, PCs, and PCs are diminishing and the sales have been poor. Why are you optimistic?
Okay, so if we look at the numbers, the personal systems business today is still a $450 billion TAM. And we have about 19% of the traditional PC market, so that means, 4 out of 5 people aren't buying a HP PC today, and we are operating in a consolidating market. We see the top 3 getting bigger at the behest of the smaller guys, and so whilst it's not as sexy an industry as it used to be, it's still very personal in nature. People, as I look around the room here, are still attached to their devices, and it's a big part of their life, and it's a large business. The printing business is also not a dead business. This business is actually growing in the enterprise space at about 2% every year. There are some secular declines in home printing, but we're looking at new business models to make that even more relevant for our customers every single day. And a business we don't talk about very often is our digital printing business. Every large billboard you see, and in the future, many of the packages that you see will be digitally printed, because you can get rid of inventory when you move from old, analog type presses to digital presses, where you can customize each and individual label. We've transformed entire industries. Think about the book industry, where publisher would publish books and they'd build inventory and it'd go into a warehouse. Today that doesn't happen. You order a book on Amazon, it's printed on one of our digital printing presses and it's delivered to you the next day, and there is no inventory. It's personally printed for you. Think about the transformation there.
And Dion, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, pick a number, what percentage of your printing business is 3D printing likely to be, and how big will the 3D printing market be then versus today?
I think that's the gazillion-dollar question, and anyone who thinks they can tell you the answer to that is probably wrong. And depending on which genius you pay today, which analyst, they'll tell you by 2020, still a nascent business today, it's about a $5 billion TAM. Some will say it's a $10 billion TAM by 2020. Others will say it's a $100 billion TAM by 2020, which means nobody knows. And the reason for that is because the industry as a whole has not really solved the key problems within 3D printing of speed, quality, and cost. And when you do that, in the same way as we're disrupting traditional two-dimensional printing with digital printing, as I explained before, when we do that with 3D printing, we'll disrupt traditional manufacturing. That's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. I think it will first start in prototyping and bespoke manufacturing, and it will evolve into as large as we can make it disruptive to traditional manufacturing. Nothing's really changed since the assembly line, right? And you wind back the clock to our ancestors, you turn up with a horse to the blacksmith and they'd custom make a shoe for your horse, and it was a piece of art. And then we took that and we created the assembly line. It wasn't a perfect shoe anymore, but we could spit out millions of them, and we all know what that did to society. We're almost reversing that now. We're democratizing manufacturing, putting it back in the hands of wherever it needs to be, into the hands of the artist. And when we can solve those issues of speed, quality, and cost, it sets up a really bright future. And we're doing that leveraging our core printing technology. So it's the same technology that we've used in ink-based printing. We're bringing that to three-dimensional printing. So there's 30 years of intellectual property going into our products. We've announced the technology. The first products will come out in 2016. And over the next 5 to 10 years, this is a long-term bet. I think it will be a really big core part of our business.
We have learned from these very good communicators that communication and keeping the message simple and clear is incredibly important in business transformations, and that culture is probably more important than any of us understood. And talking about purpose sure helps galvanize the organization. So good luck with your ongoing enterprise transformations, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Pattie.